Have you ever noticed a tiny change that made your heart tremble? It wasn't loud, it wasn't obvious, but when it came, you just knew that things would never be the same again. Maybe just yesterday, he was still sending you goodnight messages, still asking if you had eaten, still smiling at the sound of your trembling voice on the phone. But today, his replies come slower. His words seem shorter, drier, lacking the usual warmth. And in that moment, a quiet but heavy shadow falls gently over your soul. Every woman has felt that. The silence of a man can sometimes echo louder than 1,000 words. You read and reread the last message he sent, wondering if you said something wrong, if you were too much, or if someone else had stepped into his world. Questions spin endlessly in your head, like a song stuck on repeat, giving you no peace. And then instinct kicks in. You think, maybe I need to do something to bring him back. So you send another message, and then another. You try to come up with reasons to see him, to prove that you're still here, still loving, still caring. Deep down, you believe that if you give more, if you love louder, he'll remember why he once chose you, and everything will return to how it was. But the opposite happens. The more you hold on, the further he pulls away. The more you show you need him, the colder he becomes. Like trying to hold sand in your palm, the tighter you grip, the faster it slips through, leaving behind a painful emptiness. That moment when you realize love cannot be held together by panic. Your heart aches because you did nothing wrong. You just loved. You simply didn't want to lose what once made your heart shine. But the paradox of love is this: when fear leads the way, every effort becomes pressure, pushing the other person even further. He didn't leave because you didn't love enough. He left because you loved with fear. And to a man, that fear doesn't feel like love. It feels like a burden. There's a truth few dare to admit. Sometimes we lose love not because we didn't give enough, but because we gave too much. A man cannot crave what he knows will always be there. Just like a rare gem, if it's displayed on every street corner, who would still see it as precious? You remember the early days, when you both stayed up late texting, when a single glance could make your heart race. Back then, you didn't need to try so hard. You were just being yourself. And it was your mystery, your freedom, your wholeness that drew him in. But over time, you unknowingly let fear steal that. You gave too much, appeared too easily, and left him too little space to miss you. This is not your fault. True love always comes with the fear of loss. Every message he doesn't reply to, every postponed date, feels like a thin blade slicing into your heart. And the urge to fix things, to hold on, comes from genuine love. But love doesn't always mean doing more. Sometimes, real love means daring to stop. In that moment, a woman often doesn't realize that her need for more has quietly turned into pressure. For men, too much need isn't attractive. It feels like a chain. It's not love, it's weight. And once the heart feels burdened, its natural reflex is to escape. Think back. Have you ever held a tiny bird in your hand? If you grip it too tightly, you'll hurt it. If you let your hand go limp, it will fly away. But if you open your palm just enough, it may choose to stay. Love is the same. Right now, you may be asking, so what should I do? If I don't hold on, won't he leave? This is the core of it. It's also where most of us stumble. Because the fear of losing what we love makes us act in ways that go against what love truly needs. What a man desires is not a woman who does everything to make him stay. It's a woman who is whole enough for him to want to stay. He wants to feel that his presence is a valued choice, not an obligation. But saying this is easier than living it. When your heart trembles at his silence, when each passing moment feels like an eternity without a message, who wouldn't want to do something, say something, anything to break that dreadful quiet? And so, you send another message. You check your phone again. You wait. Each action carries a fragile hope that maybe this time he'll respond. Maybe he'll remember how much he once loved you. But don't you see? Every time you do that, you place the fate of your love in someone else's hands. You become the seeker, the pleader, instead of the woman he once admired, the woman with a whole world inside her, full of mystery, full of light. That fading moment, when he begins to grow distant, is actually a doorway. A quiet reminder that love cannot survive on panic. It needs distance. It needs space. It needs mystery to keep desire alive. But to truly understand this, you must face your deepest fear, the fear of losing the man you love. You must find the courage to sit still in the pain, to let it wash over you like a wave, without immediately trying to swim against it. That is the heart's test. And it is also the beginning of a new journey. A journey where you no longer ask, how do I make him stay? But instead, you begin to ask, how do I stay true to myself? And from that moment on, a truth begins to shine through. Love is not a game of holding on. It is the art of letting be. There is a truth few are willing to accept. Love is not always kept alive through constant presence. In fact, it is often distance, absence, and mystery that keep desire burning. People, especially men, tend to cherish what they feel they could lose, not what they are certain will always be in their hands. Imagine a precious gem buried deep within the earth. To reach it, one must invest effort, take risks, and go on a journey. And it is this rarity, this challenging path, that makes the gem priceless. But if tomorrow that same gem were displayed on every street corner, requiring no effort to possess, it would soon become just another ordinary item. Desire in love follows the same rule. A man is drawn not only to beauty, but to the feeling of conquest. He wants to feel that he is winning something valuable, something no one else can easily have. When a woman becomes too available, too predictable, too devoted to the point of losing herself, she begins to transform into the opposite of what once attracted him. Something familiar, something assumed, and anything taken for granted is rarely appreciated. This doesn't mean you should become distant or cold, or play mind games to make yourself hard to reach. True and lasting attraction doesn't come from games. It comes from a very different energy, the energy of a woman who knows her worth and doesn't need to lose herself to be loved. Desire does not live in excess. It lives in space, in a bit of absence, a bit of mystery, a bit of uncertainty that makes a man yearn, pursue, and work for your presence. Mystery, like oxygen to a flame, fuels longing. When everything is revealed, when everything is too easy and always available, the flame begins to fade. Have you noticed that in the early days of love, people often spend more time imagining each other than actually being together? A simple message can make your heart race all day. A small date can occupy your thoughts for an entire week. That's because you haven't fully belonged to each other yet. There is a space, a gap, an uncertainty that keeps you both searching, both craving. That absence is what makes presence feel precious. A man who doesn't feel bound by obligation will stay because he wants to, not because he has to. And that is real love, a free choice, not a forced commitment. Many women mistakenly believe that if they love more, care more, give him all their time, he will feel lucky and choose to stay. But love doesn't work like a math equation, where the more you give, the more you receive. In the world of emotion, too much can easily become pressure. He doesn't pull away because you didn't give enough. He pulls away because he no longer feels the need to hold on. And this is not because you aren't valuable, but because you offered that value too easily. A gift given without the need to wait or earn slowly loses its magic. This is the invisible law of desire. People do not yearn for what they know they will always have. They yearn for what feels just out of reach, what holds a hint of distance, what they must strive for again and again. But how do you live by this law without turning it into a game? The answer lies in two words: self-respect. When a woman lives fully in her own world, with passions, friendships, and joys of her own, she doesn't need to pretend to be mysterious. She truly is an entire universe, one no one can fully possess. And that is what makes her naturally magnetic. In that kind of attraction, there is a very different kind of silence. A silence not born from punishment or anger, but from a place of inner peace. A silence that doesn't need to explain, prove, or justify. It is the silence of someone who knows she is whole, even when alone. A strategic silence, not from playing games, but from a deep love for herself. This silence whispers softly, I want you, but I don't need you. I can love you, but I will not lose myself to keep love. And it is in that moment that a man begins to see your true value, because you are no longer a need he must fulfill, but a presence he could lose, and that makes you rare. Picture a candle glowing in a dark room. When it burns constantly, you grow used to the light. But if it goes out for a moment and darkness returns, only then do you realize how much it mattered. Love is just like that. When a woman is always there, always ready, a man becomes too familiar with her light and starts to take it for granted. But when she knows how to withdraw, How to hold her silence. He begins to feel the emptiness, and in that space, desire is reignited. What matters is that this withdrawal is not an act. It is not manipulation. It is a powerful decision to redirect your energy toward yourself instead of revolving around someone else. When you do that, your energy changes. You become mysterious, not because you hide anything, but because your life is so full, no one can grasp it all. And that is the most beautiful kind of allure, the magnetism of a soul that never runs dry. You may feel fear when you think about going silent. You may fear that if you stop texting, stop reaching out, stop proving your love, he will simply walk away. But try seeing it another way. If a man truly leaves just because you paused for a moment, was that ever the love you deserved? The invisible law of desire will always be at play, whether you accept it or not. The question is, will you let it work against you or make it your ally? That choice begins with you, with the courage to pause, to hold on to your mystery, to give yourself the freedom you truly need. Because real love does not come from clinging. It is born from the desire to touch something that never fully belongs to anyone. Silence, when it comes from someone you love, carries the weight of a storm. It doesn't bring thunder or lightning to the outside world, but within your soul, waves of anxiety rise and crash again and again. You look at your phone. The screen is dark. No messages, no sign that he's thinking about you. Every minute stretches like an hour, and with each moment, your heart tightens a little more. The pain isn't just in his absence. It's in what you lose, along with that silence. Evenings once filled with laughter now feel like hollow spaces. Plans for the future, a trip, a home. Mornings spent together now shatter like pieces of glass falling to the floor. You haven't just lost a man. You've lost the vision of the life you once hoped for. And that loss, it cuts deeper than any wound. You try to understand. Why isn't he answering? What did I do wrong? Has he met someone else? Your mind becomes a reel, constantly replaying old memories, every word, every look, every touch, searching for clues, for answers. But the more you search, the more lost you feel, because sometimes silence has no explanation. And in that silence, many women make the same mistake, acting out of fear. You type a long message, then delete it. You call, leave a voicemail, hoping that just hearing your voice will soften his heart. You find ways to accidentally show up where he might be. All of it driven by one deep desire, to bring him back, to fill the empty space that's choking your heart. But here lies the paradox. The more you do that, the further he drifts. To a man, this panic doesn't feel like love. It feels like dependence. And dependence, deep in his instincts, is something he wants to escape. Do you remember what it feels like when someone holds on to you too tightly? Not with their hands, but with their eyes, their words, their energy. A part of you might feel sympathy, but another part just wants to pull away, to breathe. That is what happens when you love from fear. And here is a bitter truth: men sense energy long before they understand the reason behind it. He may not say it out loud, but deep inside, something tells him that things have changed. Love starts to feel like obligation. Attraction turns into pressure. And while you're trying everything to hold on, he feels a growing urge to leave. This doesn't mean you're wrong for loving deeply, for caring, for wanting to hold on to something precious. No, you're not wrong. You're just fighting the wrong battle, because love isn't a war to win someone's presence. True love can only survive when both people are free to choose to stay. In the storm of silence, the hardest thing isn't doing more. It's stopping. Stopping before you send another message. Stopping before you find a reason to call. Stopping before you lose the last bit of peace you have. And just breathe. Let yourself feel the pain, but don't let it guide your hand or your heart. I know that sounds hard, because when you love, every empty moment feels like an open wound, and the natural instinct is to cover it, to fix it, to make it stop hurting. But sometimes, a wound needs to breathe. Sometimes, pain needs to be felt, not rushed away. If you're hearing these words and feel your heart tremble, if you see yourself in every quiet pause, every question, every unconscious action, I want you to know this: you are not alone. So many women are walking through the same storm, carrying the same ache. And maybe, just maybe, your story will be the light that helps someone else find their way. If you feel called to, leave a comment. Share what you've been through, because sharing doesn't just free you, It touches hearts, waiting for someone to understand. And if these words meant something to you, hit like and subscribe, not to please anyone else, but to remind yourself that you're on a journey to return to yourself, a journey where you deserve someone who walks beside you. Let these moments become your anchor, not to hold on to someone else, but to hold on to yourself. Because when you learn to stand strong in the storm, you'll realize something powerful. It's not his silence that's breaking you. It's the lack of self-love that's doing that. And the moment you turn inward and embrace yourself, the storm outside begins to calm. In that quiet, a truth becomes clear: love cannot be begged for. It can only be invited. And that invitation doesn't live in long messages or repeated promises. It lives in your confident gaze, your graceful walk, your full and rich life that you've built for yourself. When you stop chasing, when you go quiet and turn inward, you're no longer the one seeking. You become the woman he longs for, the one he must reach for, fight for, and earn. That is the first step in turning silence from a storm into a strength. And you, no matter how shaky you feel, have the power to step into that strength. Because the truth is this: you didn't lose him in a single day, but you can lose yourself in a single moment. And what matters more than holding on to a man is holding on to your heart, your soul, and your worth. There is a strange kind of power in two seemingly simple words: stop. But for a heart that is breaking, stopping can be the hardest thing to do. Because when you love and feel the one you love slipping away, every instinct inside you screams, do something. Call, text, show up, demand answers, anything, as long as it breaks the suffocating silence that is swallowing you whole. Yet in that very moment, the choice to stop becomes an act of courage. It is like standing in the middle of a storm, wind slashing across your face, rain pouring down your body, but you refuse to run. You let the storm pass, and in the quiet that follows, you begin to hear the rhythm of your own heart again. Love is often spoken of as giving, as reaching outward. But few people tell you that love also needs stillness. Because if you only give without pausing to nurture yourself, that love will run dry. When fear begins to guide you, every action no longer comes from love. It becomes a plea. Picture a flower. It doesn't chase the bees. It doesn't cry out for attention. It simply blooms, quietly and confidently, releasing its fragrance, showing its colors. And in that peaceful being, the bees come. The wind carries its scent. The flower doesn't need to pull, it draws others in by simply being itself. A woman is no different. When you try too hard to hold on to a man, you're sending the message, without him, I'm not enough. But when you stop, breathe deeply, and accept that you are whole whether he stays or not, you send out an entirely different energy. That energy is not rooted in need. It is rooted in choice. It whispers, I love you, but I don't need you to survive. And from that place, true attraction begins to return. This doesn't mean becoming cold or pretending not to care. No, this is not a game. This is not manipulation. This is a transformation at the root. It is when you sit with your pain, not running, not covering it up with action, but allowing yourself to face it. You look directly into the fear of loss, you acknowledge it, and you still choose to hold on to your dignity. The pain will not vanish overnight. Your heart will still ache when your phone screen remains dark. You will still feel empty, remembering the moments your hands were once held. But instead of chasing that pain away, you learn to breathe with it. Each deep breath becomes a thread pulling you back into your body, into the present, into yourself. Let me tell you, this stopping is not failure. Stopping is a quiet victory, because it means you refused to let fear control you. It means you chose to keep your dignity rather than trade everything for someone's fleeting presence. And it means that for the first time in many weary days, you are returning to yourself. There's a cruel irony in love that few want to admit sometimes. The moment you stop, go quiet, and turn inward is the very moment he begins to feel the absence. Like a candle you had grown used to suddenly going out, the darkness reminds you just how bright it once was. A man is the same. When you are no longer chasing, no longer crying out, your silence becomes a mirror, forcing him to face what he is losing. But remember, this silence is not a tactic. It is the natural result of choosing yourself. If he returns, it is no longer out of pressure or obligation, but out of desire. And if he does not return, you will still have gained something far more precious. You will have kept your soul. Stopping also gives you the chance to rediscover what was once forgotten. Maybe you've missed time with friends, put aside hobbies you once loved, all because your mind was consumed by the relationship. Now is the time to return to those things. Read a book, paint a picture, take a walk in the park, sit quietly and listen to music. These small things become your healing. They remind you that you are a whole world, not just a satellite spinning around a man. And then, as you begin to spend time with yourself, something magical happens. The fear of losing love no longer weighs you down like it used to. You start to see that even if he's gone, you can still smile, still live, still be happy. The pain is still there, but it's no longer a pit pulling you under. It becomes a mountain you have climbed. And from the top, you see a wider view. Your life did not end with one person. It has only just begun. I want you to remember this. Every time you choose to stop, every time you take a deep breath, instead of sending another message, you are laying a brick in the foundation of your freedom. Every breath says, I am worthy of love, but I will not lose myself to have it. You may shake, you may cry, but don't see that as weakness. It is strength, because tears are proof that you are feeling, that you are alive, that your heart is real. And once the tears fall, you will feel lighter, clearer. In that brave silence, a truth begins to shine. You cannot control who stays or leaves, but you can control how you love yourself. And that, in the end, is a power no one can ever take away. So when your heart urges you to do something, to chase, to pull him back, try doing the opposite. Stop. Breathe. Place your hand on your chest and listen to your heartbeat. That beat is yours. It does not depend on anyone else. It reminds you that you are still here, still whole, still enough. And from that fullness, you can love not because you need, but because you choose. Stopping does not mean giving up on love. It simply means letting go of fear. And when fear fades away, love finally has room to breathe, to live, and to bloom. There is a strange moment that happens when you stop chasing someone. You begin to hear your own voice. The voice that was once buried beneath unread messages, plans built entirely around someone else, and the constant fear of, does he still love me? Now, as the noise quiets down, a space opens up. At first, that space might feel empty, disorienting, like you've lost your balance. But then, from within that space, a gentle echo rises. I'm still here. I never left. That is the voice from within you. For the first time in months, you may find yourself sitting alone in your favorite coffee shop, sipping slowly, no longer rushing to check your phone. You might smile when a familiar song plays. You glance out the window and realize the city is still beautiful. The sky is still blue. The sun still shines, even without him. This is the beginning of your return to yourself. When a woman shifts her energy from holding on to someone toward nurturing herself, a subtle yet powerful change begins. She no longer revolves around an external center. She becomes the center of her own universe. This doesn't make her selfish. It makes her whole. And wholeness shines in a way no one can ignore. You begin to remember what once brought you joy before love arrived. Maybe it was painting, journaling, dancing, spontaneous trips with friends. These fragments, once seen as small, now come together to form the picture of your life, vibrant, rich, and complete without the presence of any man. Ironically, it is when you stop placing him at the center that you start shining the brightest in his eyes. Because at that moment, you are no longer a need he must carry. You become a universe he longs to be a part of. He no longer sees you as someone who needs him to survive, but as someone who is already whole, inviting him to join her world. There is a vast difference between two images, a woman who chases and a woman who walks calmly forward. The first says, I can't live without you. The second says, I live, I thrive, and I choose you if you are worthy to walk beside me. That difference, deep within a man's instincts, is what creates true attraction. On this journey, you begin to relearn the art of discernment. You no longer pour all your energy and attention into one person. You redistribute it to your friends, your family, your passions. And when you do that, you don't just become more interesting in the eyes of men. You become more radiant in your own eyes. You look in the mirror and see a woman who is alive, growing, and discovering herself again. You may be surprised by how quickly the world responds to this shift. Friends want to spend more time with you. Your work opens up new opportunities. People who once saw you as predictable are now intrigued by the mystery you exude. Even the man who grew distant may begin to feel the space you once filled as an emptiness he can no longer ignore. And the most beautiful part is this: you didn't do any of it to impress him. You didn't act for him. You acted for yourself. But it's precisely that which makes you magnetic in the most natural way. There's an interesting truth in psychology. People are drawn to what they know they cannot fully possess. A woman who has her own life, her own world beyond love, is the living embodiment of that truth. Because he knows, even with him beside her, she will still be herself. He cannot own her entire universe. And for that very reason, he yearns to be in it. This is the opposite of a woman who gives up everything to revolve around a man. In that space, he no longer feels the need to try, to treasure her. Her presence becomes assumed, unearned, and what is assumed is eventually neglected. Coming back to yourself is not turning your back on love. On the contrary, it is the only true foundation for loving deeply. Because when you are full, the love you give is not a plea for validation, but a wholehearted offering. You can love without fearing loss, because you know you will never lose yourself. You can give without asking in return, because your worth no longer depends on someone else's approval. And from that freedom, if love comes, it will take on an entirely different shape. No longer a game of power, no longer a cycle of chasing and avoiding, but a meeting between two free and whole souls, choosing each other not out of need, but out of want. Imagine this. One day, that man may come back, but when he stands before you, he will see a different woman. Not the anxious girl who once sent message after message, desperate for reassurance. Not the one who made him the center of her universe, but a strong, mysterious, passionate woman with an entire life of her own. A woman he can't take for granted. A woman he can no longer assume will always be there. And in that moment, the choice is yours. You can open the door, or you can smile and keep walking. Because now, you understand that the most valuable thing was never him. It was you, the woman who reclaimed her soul, her pride, and her life. Coming back to yourself is a difficult journey, because it asks you to stop seeking validation from the outside. But it is also the most beautiful path, because the reward at the end is a love that can never be taken away, the love you give to yourself. And from that place, every other love, if it arrives, will only be a bonus, not a requirement for your existence. There is a kind of silence that makes your heart tremble with fear. But there is another kind so powerful that no one can ignore it. The first kind comes from anxiety, from emptiness, from the fear that says, if I don't text him, he'll forget me. But the second kind, the silence that follows your return to yourself, carries an irresistible energy. It is no longer the silence of fear. It is the silence of confidence. A man may not recognize that shift right away, but his instincts will. He will feel the absence. He will feel the space that once felt familiar, now becoming uncomfortably empty. No more constant messages. No more predictable presence. No more feeling that you'll always be there. And it's only when that familiarity disappears that he begins to realize your true worth. This is not a game. It's not manipulation. Because if you pretend to be silent while still panicking inside, that energy will still show, and he will still feel the desperation. True magnetism only appears after a real shift when you begin investing in yourself, nurturing your own life, and no longer tying your existence to anyone else. Picture this. You're sitting in a cafe, reading a book, sipping a hot latte. You smile to yourself as you turn a page, eyes lighting up with a new idea. In that moment, you don't need anyone to validate your worth. You are already complete. And if someone were to see you right then, they would be drawn in not by your appearance, but by your energy. A quiet, radiant energy, like a flame burning steady through the night. Men are drawn to that kind of energy, the energy of a woman who is mysterious, not easily predicted, not easily claimed. When you go silent, you don't disappear. You simply make your presence more precious. And it is that rarity that rekindles desire. Have you noticed? The rare things always stir our longing. A fleeting sunset feels more special than a whole day of sunshine. A melody that plays just once stays in our memory longer than a song on repeat. Your silence is the same. It is no longer a sign of absence, but a reminder of value. In that silence, you send an invisible message. I am me. I can love you. but I do not need you to be myself. And that message is what truly earns a man's admiration. Because he knows you are not an easy choice, not a habit, not a given. You are a free and complete person, and if he wants to stay, he must cherish you. The important part is this: you don't need to try to create that magnetism. It's not found in tactics or dating rules. It lives in your inner transformation. When you truly release the desperation, when you truly choose yourself, the energy shifts naturally. Others will feel it even when you say nothing. He may start texting again. He may find excuses to see you. But this time, you'll notice the difference. He didn't return because you chased him. He returned because he missed your presence. And if you choose to open that door, love can begin again, this time, not out of fear, but out of mutual respect and longing. And if he doesn't return, you still win, because you have come back to yourself. You've become a woman who doesn't need to be chosen to know her worth. You are a gem that shines without needing any spotlight. And any man who fails to recognize that light simply doesn't deserve it. In this new kind of silence that becomes attraction, you'll notice something else. It's not just men who are drawn to you. The world reacts too. Friends want to be closer because your energy brings them peace. New job opportunities open up because you're no longer driven by lack, but glowing with confidence. Even in new connections, you walk in differently, not seeking approval, but sharing your fullness. That's when life begins to shift. Not because of anyone else, but because you shifted within yourself. There's a beautiful quote that says, "A flower does not think of competing with the flower next to it. It just blooms." A flower doesn't compare or chase. It simply blooms. And when you reach this stage, you are just like that, not fighting for love, not begging for attention. You simply bloom, and the world is naturally drawn to you. This is the magic of strategic silence, not absence, but powerful presence. Not a game, but growth. Not meant to make someone suffer, but to remind you that love cannot live in suffocation. It needs space to breathe. And when you are full enough to offer that space, love, if it's meant to be, will find its way back. But more importantly, you no longer need love to return in order to feel valuable, because you've already found that value within yourself. And from there, everything else is simply a bonus. Silence is no longer your fear. It becomes your ally. It becomes the invisible cloak that makes you mysterious, radiant, unmissable. And in that silence, you shine in your own unique way, a light no one can look away from. One day, you wake up and realize that your heart no longer trembles when your phone stays silent. You sit by the window, sunlight pouring in, and you feel at peace, not because someone messaged you, but because you found your way back to yourself. That's the day you finally understand this journey was never truly about him. It was always about you. You've walked through pain. You've endured long, restless nights. You've stood in the middle of a storm of silence that felt like it would swallow you whole. And then you learned the hardest lesson of all: to stop. From that stillness, you began to be reborn. Not into a version of yourself that would please someone else, but into your truest self, the woman you had forgotten while chasing after love. In this rebirth, you are no longer someone waiting to be chosen. You are someone who chooses yourself every day, in every decision, in every breath. You choose to eat what you love, to go where you feel alive, to spend time with people who warm your heart. You place your happiness in your own hands, not in the hands of any man. And in that choice, you become free. There is a kind of freedom that no one can ignore. It's when you no longer live to please, but to bloom. You walk through the world not seeking approval, but radiating your own light. And that light, strange as it may be, becomes exactly what others are drawn to. A man may come back. If he does, he will see a woman who has changed. No more panic, no more pleading messages, no more desperate eyes. Before him now stands a calm, confident, mysterious woman, radiant in her own world. A woman he cannot take lightly. A woman he can no longer assume will always be there. And if love is reborn, this time it will be built on freedom and admiration, not on lack and dependency. And if he doesn't come back, that no longer matters, because you've regained something far greater: yourself, your soul, your dignity, your life. You now understand that love is not everything. It is simply a part of the much larger journey you are on. And if love comes again, it will be a bonus, not the condition of your existence. In Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Jung once wrote, There is no coming to consciousness without pain. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And it's true, it was pain that forced you to confront your soul. You couldn't hide. You couldn't run. And from that pain, you awakened. You realized that the true love journey always begins with self-love. This rebirth doesn't turn you into a woman with a closed heart. On the contrary, your heart opens wider than ever before. But now, you love with clear eyes and steady feet. You can give your love deeply, but you no longer lose yourself in it. You can say, "I love you," while holding a quiet truth in your heart. But I don't need you to be me. This is the difference between a love that breaks you and a love that grows you. And now, you have chosen the second kind. When a woman reaches this stage, her energy changes from the inside out. She no longer enters a room hoping to be noticed. She walks in knowing she is enough. And that certainty echoes in every gesture, every glance, every smile. It's the kind of magnetism that cannot be faked or hidden because it comes from deep within. Others may leave, others may stay. But for you, that no longer feels like a threat because you now understand that the one person who must never abandon you is yourself. In another passage, Jung reminds us, "The unlived life is a disease from which one can die. A life unlived is a slow death. And you, by choosing yourself, have refused to live half alive. You have chosen to live, not to be picked, but to pick yourself, not to be an echo, but to be a voice." Look back at your journey. You started with fear, with the pain of loss, with nights of aching silence. You weathered the storm. You learned to stop. You learned to breathe. You found yourself again. You turned silence into strength. And now you have emerged as a free, whole, radiant woman. This isn't just a change in a relationship. It's a transformation of your entire life. And from this transformation, you send a message to the world. I don't need anyone to make me whole. I am whole from within. And if love comes, it will be a shared gift, not a rescue. If one day, the man who once let you go returns, he will realize the emptiness you left cannot be filled by anyone else. But by then, the question will no longer be, does he choose me? It will be, do I choose him? And the answer will come not from fear, but from peace. And if he doesn't return, you will smile. Because now you know life is vast. So many doors remain, so many paths, so much light, still waiting. And you will walk forward, no longer the woman swallowed by darkness, but the woman who carries her own fire. In that moment, you are not just a memory in someone's heart. You become an unforgettable presence, because you no longer need to be chosen to know your worth. You are the worth. You are the woman who rose from pain, and in that rising, you are more beautiful than ever. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this story. If this message touched your heart, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you'll never miss the next journey we take together. Your support means the world to me.